Welcome to the Disability Adventures podcast. I'm Andrea Anderson.
And I'm Chip Dodd from Team Disability. Hey, everybody, we've got a special podcast for you this time. Very different from the other podcasts that we've had. As you probably know, if you listen to our show, we just got done doing the C2C, and we normally do the race ramble, and then we move on to the next race or the next podcast. This time we have, the C2C is like a family reunion for racers up and down the East Coast, as well as some people fly in from all around. It's a lot of fun because it's crossing Florida in the middle of February, and it's just, I don't know, it's just a great race. So we decided there was a few teams out there that had some really cool stories, and we wanted to give them an opportunity to tell their stories. And so we had a short little podcast for each of them, just to get their story out, hopefully give you guys some inspiration and get you guys inspired to do your first expedition race, maybe even the C2C. Andrea, who do we have coming up on the docket for tonight's podcast?
So we have three different interviews. They're like mini race rambles. We have Lubono Capital, we have Trailheads Adventure Company, and we have ARDotWatch. So the first interview is with Lubono Capital with David Grabiner and his brother Geremy Grabiner. And they took home the first place two-person male team, and they were also third overall. And Geremy, it was his first multi-day race. It's really fun to hear them talk back and forth about the race. So here it is. All right, we are here with David Grabiner and Geremy Grabiner of Lubono Capital. They raced as a two-person male team in the C2C this year, 2025. We're excited that they're on the podcast. David is a frequent teammate of ours, raced with us last year in Ecuador and in Alaska and at the national championship. But for the C2C, he was on his own with his brother. So I just have to know, Geremy, how did David talk you into this?
The full story is that David's daughter Eloise was supposed to race with him, and she decided she didn't want to for whatever reason. So David, I think, first told me like in December, hey, Eloise isn't going to be racing. Do you want to race with me? And for the listeners, I've only done one race before. It was the Bear in Georgia, 10-hour race in September. So I am not a seasoned racer by any means. So when he told me December, I thought, well, I'm not so sure about this. Let's talk about it when I come home for Christmas. And I did that, and I asked David. I said, okay, be serious with me. Do you think that physically I can do this race? And my brother, being my brother, said, well, your body can do it. It's just a matter if your mind is able to take you there. So, David is very much mind over matter to the nth degree. I still wasn't convinced because it's a lot of not sleeping. I love to sleep. It's a big race. I've not been training or anything to that effect, just playing my over 30 men's soccer league. And then like January 14, he said, okay, you have to decide if you're doing this or I'm selling my spot, like my race spot. So I said, all right. I remembered I was always the better athlete in the family. So really, how hard can it be?
It's just David. Jeez.
So I said, I got 5 weeks to start training here. That will put me on an even playing field as David, just given my superior athleticism in the race. And, I committed to it. I thought, it was my brother's 40th birthday. I was like, this will be an interesting adventure. So don't want to get too far ahead into the race, but that's kind of how the whole process. I was a fill-in, and now I'm glad I did it, but I was very hesitant because I was scared of a 72-hour race for sure.
Well, I think that's a good thing to be scared of. I mean, it's a big deal. But I think I'm also getting like a feel for your family dynamic. Um, and David said something in one of the videos that was online about how you were suffering, but you deserve it. And David, I have to know, why did he deserve that suffering?
Oh, he's 7.5 years younger than me. Obviously, I'm a lot older. I just turned 40. You know, he thinks he's better at me than everything. So it's good that he gets to suffer a little bit.
Do you
You know,
guys have
like,
other siblings too?
yeah, my sister. I'm taking her on a race on the March 22nd, the Omar. We're doing that together.
Don't let her watch this podcast. She'll be like, hell no, I know what you did to Jeremy. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now she called me afterwards. She's like, "Well, now I have so much more pressure. I can't wimp out because I'm known in the family as the one that likes to stay home, play video games, not go outside. And so I'm always being teased for being a little bit of the outdoor wimp, quote unquote. So since I've done this, my sister has no room to complain about any suffering at the next race.
Wow, I would never guess that about you, Jeremy. You just did a 3-day race and you don't like to go outside?
I
Well,
mean, he doesn't mountain bike either. He doesn't even have a bike. He doesn't run
Wow.
either. He
Wow.
doesn't do anything.
Wow.
well,
So
the,
then
the thing with Grabiners, as you know my brother racing with him, we are very competitive.
Yeah.
So, before, as soon as I said I'm willing to do this, I said, okay, we're gonna platform, right? That's like the expectation. So that's just the nature. If it's competition, we are gonna push ourselves to the brink because none of us like to lose.
I have no doubt about that. I think David has been like out of all of our teammates, he's got the most competitive spirit. Like he's just so it shouldn't have surprised me, but when you guys were so close to Team Disability, I was just like, wow, that's his brother, and I don't think he's done any races. So I guess a 10-hour race counts as a race, but that's pretty impressive. I was really impressed. And I'm wondering, um, well, David, what did you tell him to do to get ready for the race?
I told him just to work on like long walks and getting on the bike. He was on a stationary bike. I was like, just you're not going to get like that much fitness in this amount of time, but you can get used to like this longness of stuff. Get used to it. That's all. That's the only thing you can do is try to get used to it going for a long time.
Yeah.
Um, you know, we're not going to get you faster at running or faster at biking in a month. So that's basically what I told him to focus on.
Like
And did
focus
you
on the
take that
skills,
advice?
not the endurance.
Yeah, yeah, just focus on getting used to doing it as much as you could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, my workout schedule, if you could call that, was just I would run, walk for an hour, and then the next day do bike for an hour and a half on a stationary bike, and then just switch off and on. So I was just trying to be consistent with moving. I think I did one like uh 10-mile like walk run just 2 weeks before just to see if I could, like with my pack and all that kind of stuff. So that was like the only long thing that I did. But yeah, just trying to move. I probably could have done a little bit more, but it's really hard for me to motivate myself working out. And you're just at a gym and it's hard to go for hours and hours, just um doing that, especially on the bike, because it's a weird feeling. Because when you're biking, you can kind of coast a little bit. It's just a different feeling. But on the stationary bike, it's hard to tell like how far are you really going, how much effort you're putting in. So I was a bit nervous about the bike. Thankfully, Florida is flat because when I did the Bear, even though it was shorter, the mountain biking was pretty tough, and having a couple of times had to push my bike, like the flatness really helped. And of course, David pulled me a couple of legs or a leg and a half. So that also helps as well. I will give him credit. He really he put the team on his back, literally in some ways.
I was expecting, I was like, okay, I'm going with my brother. We'll just have like an easy race. It's just gonna be an easy race for me. And then Jeremy gets all competitive. I'm like, okay, now I gotta try and beat Chip since he's there. So
And you were doing really well from the beginning. Like you're
Yeah.
like second place overall. I'm sure that that was motivating.
I think we were a victim of our own success early.
Yeah.
That really surprised us. Like the first leg to get into it, it ended up being like 14 miles on foot. I saw it on my watch after, and we ran not all of it, but a lot of it. We ran a lot of that first 14 miles. I'm 100% sure we had the fastest time through the water because we didn't change anything. My stuff was already in a dry bag in my backpack, and I was carrying all the stuff. He just had water and snacks in his bag. And I said, we're just going straight. We're not stopping at all. Just swim through, get to the other side, keep going. Um,
Wow.
and it did. I
I
think
will
we gained
say,
a lot
it
of
caught
time
me
there.
off guard going into the current and having shoes on. I'm not the strongest swimmer. I had two paddles in, strokes in. I thought I was going to die right there. I was like, this is the end of my race. I can hardly move. My feet are waterlogged, but I did make it through. And we did save a ton of time. That was a great strategic decision there.
Wow. Yeah, that swim, I remember being nervous about that the year I did it, and it's harder than it looks, I think.
Yeah,
As
the current is kind of coming at you, actually. You feel it. Like you feel a little bit of current there as you're trying to go across.
Yeah. So did you feel at all responsible for Jeremy back there, or just gonna let the alligators get him?
He's fine.
Uh,
I did check on him. I was like, "Are you all right? You all right?" Like, okay.
Meanwhile, I'm like head underwater, gasping for air. Yeah, I'll make it.
so, and meanwhile, you're blaming Jeremy for your competitive, nature to kick in. When did you decide, okay, we really need to get serious and go for it?
So, no. So he wanted to be competitive, right? And I looked at the team sheets, and C2C is a great race. There's a lot of teams, but as we know, the best teams don't really go there, or a lot of the best teams don't go there. So looking at the team sheet, I knew there's no way we're going to touch High Point. I mean, that's impossible, obviously. I didn't think we would touch this ability, although I wasn't really sure because of Brenda, if she had been working out or not. But I didn't think we would touch this ability. And MRC, I didn't think we would touch either. But I was like, okay, if we are behind all those people, who else in the all male category do we have to worry about? I don't know. So I kind of made up a program of like, if we do this along the way, we should be able to get most of the checkpoints and probably come like second in the male category. And that's kind of what I thought was possible. So I had printed out the spreadsheet with all the times and everything to achieve that. Now, it didn't include a lot of sleep, and it included me doing all the O relay. So it was a lot of work. But I thought it was possible. And I do think it actually we could have done it. We could have almost cleared the course if Jeremy's knee had not started hurting.
So tell me about that, Jeremy. How'd that go?
Yeah. So, when we started out the race, I told David, let's like run at whatever your comfort pace is. I think it's like a 9-minute mile. I said, I'll just like let you know when I need to walk. And so we ran straight the first 10K, which for the record, I have never ran farther than 3 miles straight in my life. So, we started that and then we'd walk and then we'd run. And I think like there was just this adrenaline of how well we were doing. We get onto the paddle and yeah, I know we're talking about my knee, but I have to sidestep here about the paddle because when I did the 10-hour race with my brother, we were tight on time and we were doing paddle for a checkpoint. And I had never paddled a canoe with kayak paddles. And I was so bad. I was just using my arms. I was running out of energy immediately. And David was just yelling at me, constantly for an hour and a half. Can you paddle more? Can you paddle more? So I was very nervous about the paddle section. going into this, and I live in Chicago. It is freezing. I have no way to practice in any capacity. I did watch some like YouTube videos to try to get technique. So when we got onto the paddle, I still couldn't quite get it, but then David, calmly just took a minute and a half. If he had done this in the other race, we would have been in better shape. But I finally he explained to me the technique, so I got that. So we really were cruising on the paddle. We gained like an hour on our schedule as well. So when we got off the paddle, I was just feeling this like adrenaline of like, man, we're doing so good. We're like an hour and a half, 2 hours ahead of our schedule. Let's keep like pushing it. So we were walking fast, walking fast. And then like midnight, I started to feel a little bit of pain on my knee, but it was okay. Then we did the bike leg. And when we came in to the second TA after the main bike leg, I think at 11 in the morning, I got some breakfast. I sat down by the fire and I tried to straighten my leg, and it was the most pain I've like ever felt. And I had a liver surgery a year and a half ago. So like this was like really painful. So I think what David's professional diagnosis as someone who's married to a medical professional was that my IT bed was inflamed. And at that moment, I could like hardly walk. We did the walk from that TA to the boat like an hour and a half. Like that's how slowly I was walking. And I took some ibuprofen. The boat ride allowed me some time to recuperate, but for the rest of the trip, I was in pretty significant pain. I was taking a lot of ibuprofen. My liver's going to need to detox from all that just to be able to move. But it really slowed us down on all the trek portions and even the bike, because he had to pull me he pulled me a little bit on the first bike, but on the second leg after the third transition, that long bike before the whole relay, he pulled me the whole entire time because I was really having a hard time just bending my knee. So I was like mainly paddling with one
Wow.
leg. So I pushed through it. Was a lot of pain, but he alleviated as much as he could on the bike, and thankfully there was only one trek portion. I do think that last leg where the paddle and the trek, we probably could have gotten some more there if I had been feeling, but it did slow us down in moving through to get to the whole relay, which just is like more time David's awake and having to run. But yeah, I have not felt pain like that. And just very slowly, I was very appreciative of how patient David was. After that when I first felt it and we were moving so slowly, I really felt a lot of guilt because I was like, oh man, we've been doing such a great race. And now here I am, like my body's like failing. We're going to ruin it. But he was very encouraging, and that long paddle really gave us time to rest. And so.
Yeah, that's a tough spot to be in. I mean, you kept going. I mean, was there ever a point where you thought, I'm not going to be able to keep going?
So the thing is, I know my brother does not like quitters. So I think that even if we never got another checkpoint, but somehow still just made it to the end, he would be happier than getting almost all the checkpoints and quitting. So in my mind, I was like, it's going to take a serious thing for me to be able to quit. Yeah. And I will say for about 3 minutes when we got off of the boat and I was so wet and so cold and in pain, and I took off my shoes for the first time and I saw I had these giant blisters on my feet that I didn't even realize. I think I was so miserable in that moment. And I was like, oh, I want this to end here. But two things. I changed my clothes and got warm. David's wife had made these freeze-dried pasta meal that I had, which was so good and felt like home. And my girlfriend had written me a note, and she said, don't open it until like halfway through the race or whatnot. And so I opened it at that time, and it gave me a little bit more encouragement. And I kept that in my jacket for the rest of the race. So those things reinvigorated my spirit, but there was a 10-minute period where I was so cold and wet and in pain. I was like, if my brother didn't hate quitters so much, this would be the end for me.
Yeah.
So I knew I would never live it down. I was like, I gotta just keep on going, even if we end up not getting checkpoints. That's better than quitting. And fortunately, we got some sleep then, some food that reinvigorated the.
That is
Yeah.
so awesome that you pushed through that. And thanks for sharing all of that. And I want to hear from David too, but Jeremy, I want to know how you're feeling now. It's been a little over a week
Yeah.
and a day. How are you
So
feeling now?
I'm still, interestingly enough, my other knee is the one that's still kind of sore, I think because I was compensating so much. And my back is a little bit sore too. But overall, I feel good. I haven't like gone to the gym or anything like that. It's been a great excuse to, my girlfriend just left to go to the gym. She's like, "Are you coming?" I was like, "Listen, I have an excuse for at least a month here." I did a 72-hour race. So my knee's a little bit sore, but overall, I'm good. But the first like 4 days after the race, it was very painful to move, but fortunately I work from home. So I really didn't have to walk very far from my bed.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, David, from your perspective, how did the race go?
Yeah, no, I was so impressed with Jeremy. He was an awesome teammate. Like honestly, when I saw his feet with the blisters, and I know what the IT band feels like, we all do,
Hmm.
like I knew he was going
Awful.
through it, and I knew like this is good for new racers. Like you get off there, you get dry, you get some food, you get some sleep. Like I set up the tent, we slept for about 2 hours, and then we were able to go out and do the next trek. Like it's amazing how much 2 hours of sleep, getting dry, warm, and a little bit of food can just like change your mind. So there was no like from a logistics standpoint, it probably would have been, like if we had been physically able, we should have just gone out on the trek immediately. But I knew right then, like, okay, we have to change, we have to sleep, like we got to switch. But I was so impressed because he kept pushing through all of that, and on top of that, he was really great in transitions. Like a lot of new racers aren't very good in transitions, but he was really like intentional. Like, okay, what are we doing at this transition? What do I have to do? What are we doing here? So he was really quick at that. Even when I was doing the O relay, he was sleeping, but he would wake up and make sure the food was ready for me when I came back to go out to do the other lap. Like, and then when I came back the last lap, he was ready to go. Like, that really saved hours compared to someone who doesn't know what they're doing in transition. So that was really, really helpful.
That's
I was really
awesome.
impressed with that.
I need to know what your low was.
Mine?
Yeah, did you have one?
Yeah. So my low, and actually Jeremy took care of me there. Um, After the O relay, so let me talk a little bit of the O relay because I knew going into the O relay, yeah, I towed Jeremy for whatever 60 miles to get there. So I was putting a lot of energy, but I knew we were ahead of MRC. We had been fighting back and forth the entire time. We had so much fun. Like we were in the woods going back and forth, like different ways to get checkpoints, come to this checkpoint at the same time, different way, checkpoint at the same time, different way. And Shane and Charlie, amazing guys. Like
Yep.
there was not like uh any animosity in them at all. They were just like encouraging us, like you got this, keep going, keep pushing, even though we were fighting it out, right? So I know we're ahead of MRC getting to there, and I realize this O relay, I have to do it. Like I was like, okay, I got to put this on my shoulders. So I ran the entire O relay. I looked at my watch later, it was over 26 miles. It was supposed to be 15. On our original sheet, it was 15 miles. And
Wow.
I knew they said it went up to 20 supposedly, but my route, maybe it wasn't the most efficient, whatever, but it was pretty efficient, I thought besides bushwhacking it all the way through some nasty stuff, was 26 miles. And I ran it the entire time, which is like basically the second longest I've ever run in my life. And I did it in the middle of the race. So I spent a lot of energy, right? I was really spent after that. I was only on about 2 hours of sleep. And so the bike leg after that, Jeremy can't go that fast, and we were with the Goon Squad for a little bit. We got pulled by them for a good hour or two, which was amazing. But then even that we couldn't keep up. We're like, just go on. Um, and then Disability passed us um, that night as well as we're on that bike trail. and I started going off the rails. Like I had just spent myself. I needed sleep. I wasn't 100%
You did
navigating
not look
right.
good.
Yeah, no, I was like spent. Like I tried like 5 or 10 minutes like in the dirt. It wasn't really working. I didn't have a pad. It's cold. It was really cold in Florida at that time. So Jeremy was like, let's just get somewhere to sleep. And he's like, let's get some food and you can sleep. And I was like, okay. And he's like, I was like, if we go this way, there's some little bit of, it looks like there's stores on the map. It's like a main road. It looks like there might be stores. And we had this conversation. Jeremy was kind of like, well, we had a great race. We kind of experienced like the fighting for the top, but now let's experience the whole thing. Let's experience like the experience of just like stopping to eat and like taking our time and having a good time. He's like, I want to experience the whole thing. And I was
Yeah.
like, good. Like we had a whole conversation about it, and I wasn't like we were at peace with it. We were at peace that we are now coming in. You know how the races go up and down, like
I
you think you're
do.
killing it. And that I thought at that point I was at peace. We're like in eighth place, maybe. Like we're still doing good, but like there was some things that had gone on that made us think that there was a bunch of teams ahead of us. And so I was like, okay, we had a good race. We did what we wanted to do. Let's just slow it down. But now I'm just like mentally trying to even get to a fast food restaurant that's open in the middle of the night. And lo and behold, we see a Waffle House. And Jeremy's like, perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. I
Rush
wanted
it.
Waffle House.
Yep.
So we went in there, and that point was my low, like trying to get to that Waffle House. Like my mind was just like shutting down, shutting down, shutting down. I get in there, the lady, no joke, asked me 3 or 4 times, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I ordered like so much food, and then I just put my head down and went to sleep. And Jeremy like took care of me. Like he stayed awake. He kept the time. He's like, okay, we've been here for about an hour, hour and a half. We got to get going now. So I got up, got back on our bikes, and then we went to the paddle section. So it was my low, but Jeremy was an amazing teammate. Even though he was new, he took care of me in that instant, and it was perfect.
That was so awesome. And it was your 40th birthday.
Yeah,
Now the world knows.
yeah.
We're all five people that listen to our podcast. Just kidding.
Uh,
Well, we're gonna wind it up, but I do want to hear, what your high was. And we talked about lows and how to get through them, but what was the high?
I mean, the high obviously is after the race, and we didn't have any expectation of where we would place, and you never know until it's like finalized. So when somebody came to me and they're like, "Hey, I think that you're going to be finished this place," I was like, "No way, you're wrong. There's no way we did this." But in the race, I think like for me, it was seeing how, David really pushed himself on the O relay, and he ran both of them by himself. I know Chip did as well, but on 2 hours of sleep, and then to keep on going after like pulling me. And I could tell he was like so proud of having done the whole relay because he went and got one of the checkpoints that added an hour and a half and maybe wasn't the best strategic thing, but I knew that was like a personal victory he needed to have on completing that. So, that was kind of my high. I was seeing him do that and then keep going. I was just like so impressed on what he was able to do physically. And being able to paddle well. That actually, I really paddling ended up being the best part of the race for me. So I was really good coming in concerned or scared about that, but it turned out well.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think as dead as I was, I knew that High Point had done the O relay in 8 hours, and my coach Jared is on High Point. So to be like, you know what, I did it in under 7 hours. I felt pretty good about that, and then Chip blows it out of the water. But you know what? Chip's on my team, so I'm proud. Like honestly, like that was a high, and also the end, standing on the podium with disability, I felt like I had won twice. I'm there and this ability is also on the podium. Like it was a great feeling. Um,
I
so
totally loved that. I loved seeing you guys so close together and on that overall podium. So, so cool. Yeah, just congratulations. You guys really, really did great. One last question, Geremy, are you going to race some more? Would you like to do it again?
I like to just retire on top here, but if I can get the time, if I can get the time off, I will probably race in March here, or I guess it is March, but with my brother and my sister and maybe my dad. But I'm toying with the idea of doing C2C again next year.
Yeah, uh-huh.
As you should.
That's how it goes.
And we'll see, and what can maybe a year of preparation, how well, and now I'm kind of like, how well could we do this? Is kind of what's in my mind. So we'll see. If I keep having dreams about racing, I might I might stick with it. But
You will.
so either March and then C2C, nothing else in between.
If it helps, you're competitive. I think we're doing the Magnificent next year, which the dates conflict. So we are skipping the C2C. So second place is all yours.
Oh, but see,
High Point will probably still crush your soul. And then everybody else,
the thing is,
have the
Hunter said he's gonna
opportunity,
race
if you
next
train a
year,
little,
so I don't
second
know
place overall.
second place is up regardless.
What'd you say about that, Geremy? Who's racing next year?
I said Hunter said he might race C2C next year.
Oh,
Then
okay.
okay. So maybe third place. And then
Yeah.
Shane, he's gonna be back. He's gonna be trying to crush your soul. So.
Oh, come
Although
on.
we might, they wanted to race with us actually at the end. That was pretty cool. Like a lot of teams wanted to race with us after. We had a great race. There's not a lot of things I think we should have done differently. Sometimes you do, but like looking back, like we could have changed some things, but then that might have changed something else. And so I think our overall standing was pretty much, I think we outperformed our combined abilities to get there.
Wonderful.
Last plug, I just got to say, I think David was the best navigator in the whole race. I mean, he did such an amazing job cutting time for us against other top teams. And I have zero navigation skills, like truly. So it was literally him. I was of no use. And I was so amazed and impressed with what he was able to do navigation wise. So.
Yep.
And it actually did help give me confidence. Thank you, Geremy, for Oregon, that's coming up. That like I was like, okay, I nabbed the whole C2C even on sleep deprivation, and I killed it. Because I mean Geremy was there, but he wasn't helping nav. It was just my dad told him ahead of time, like, do not just let David nav. Don't even try.
Well, sometimes you just have to be self-aware, and that's okay.
And doing Oregon solo is burly. Like
Yeah.
you legit, I'm glad that you're treating it seriously because that's a race that's like designed to be dangerous and hard and pushing your limits. So we're gonna be rooting for you hardcore.
Yeah.
I kind of wish I could be doing it with you, and then I kind of am glad I'm not. But yeah, I would love to see you on the top solo spot in Oregon.
That's the goal.
Yeah. Good luck, David. Congratulations to both of you. And thanks for talking with us.
Thank you.
Next up, we've got the Trailheads Adventure Company. This is an amazing team, an amazing story, because it's not often during an adventure race somebody breaks a world record. I don't want to do a spoiler alert, but this is definitely a fun team to follow. We get to cross paths with them back at the Hogsback Adventure Race, and we found out that they're huge fans of the podcast, and they were like super stoked to be like, we were passing them going uphill, and they were like, oh my God, we're on the same course as Team Disability because, we're trying to win the thing overall, and they're trying to survive and not die. And it was just super fun getting to know them. And so next up, please give a warm welcome to Elijah and Jason Hancock. So we are here with a couple special guests. This is Jason and Elijah Hancock, who just got done doing the C2C. Elijah is now a Guinness World Record holder of the youngest person to experience an expedition length adventure race, beating Hunter and Miles. So super awesome that they were able to join us on the podcast. How are you guys feeling now that you've had a couple weeks to recover from the race?
I feel awesome.
I think we recovered well. I was really impressed. He finished strong, and we jumped right back into a bunch of outdoor activities shortly after the race. And yeah, I think yeah, he's next level.
Well, how did you feel at the very end of the race?
Well, we finished at what, 3 a.m. or something. I was really tired, but like the next night when we had the post-race dinner, I felt awesome. I felt like I'd go for a run.
Wow, that's amazing.
Excellent. So, okay, so
Yeah,
I'm sorry, go on.
no, I was just gonna say that getting in at 3 a.m., I had called ahead to secure a room because I knew we were going to be getting in around that time. And we got to the room and he went in to take a shower and I went to check on him. I was like, "Are you all right?" He's like, "I can't stay awake to take a shower." So I think we got in just in time.
That's
Yes.
awesome.
It's hard. The minute you get to the finish and all of the adrenaline starts kind of coming out of your body, and you're like, you eat food and all of that, and you're like, okay, we're actually done. It is very hard to stay awake. So okay, so
Well, I might be jumping the gun, but since we're talking about sleep, I'm wondering how much sleep you got during the race.
It was what, about 7 hours, I think.
For you, it
Wow.
was about 7 hours. Yeah. So um, we had a race plan that had us roughly 3 hours, 2 to 3 hours a night, each night, all 3 nights. And um, even though we got into TA1 about the time we wanted to, we were way too far back and they were going to shut it down early. So he got 2 hours of sleep. I got one, and I used the second hour to get us ready to go back out on the bike. And then we pushed hard all the way to TA4 because he heard there was a tent. And he's like, "I want to sleep in a tent."
Makes
So
a big difference, doesn't it?
we got what 5 hours in the tent, and he was good to go. We went from four all the way to the finish with no more sleep because he got a good recharge. So
And caffeine.
Wow.
yeah, a little bit of caffeine, and he was ready to go.
so
Wow.
so what I mean, C2C is a big race. I mean, it's 4 hours officially, usually if there's no problems with the buses on the way in. Like you guys must have known you're going into this to actually break the world record, right? This is one of those like this was your goal. Like give me a little bit of feel like what made you put this goal on the calendar, and then what was some of your training and all of that leading up to this to get you guys together as a team to say we're going to actually do this.
Well, I'll let him tell a little bit of the beginning. I mean, kind of goes all the way back to when he was younger. He started mountain biking with me when he was like five, single track, 5, 6
Wow.
years old. Um, but I really pushed him into team sports because I thought it'd be good for him. And
I didn't
then,
really like it.
yeah, he said, "No, this isn't for me." And we watched the Amazon show like so many people. And I did a race with some friends. And then he said, "Why can't I do one, Dad?" And this was when he was 9. And so he did his first two races at 9. And then as we progressed, we ended up doing one of the warrior races. And when he got to meet Hunter at the Bear, he was kind of starstruck, because he's like, "Man, this is the guy I saw on the show who was the youngest on the show." And Hunter really just kind of took him under his wing. And something came up about C2C. And we said, "Yeah, that sounds like a good goal for 2026." And then Hunter, what did Hunter tell you?
I think you can do it at 25.
Yeah. He's like, There's a record out there you might be able to break." And so at the Hogback, where we saw you guys back in June, he took us down to meet Miles and he said, "I had it. Miles took it. It's yours to take if you want it." So from June through February, we built a pretty aggressive race schedule. Really impressed. He did his first 50K at 11 as part of the
Oh,
training. And then we
wow.
did two 18-hour races. One was 6 a.m. to midnight, which was the Cauldron with Warrior, and another one was here locally that was 11 a.m. to 5 a.m. to get him some overnight experience. And we worked on nutrition, we worked on navigation, strategy. Um, yeah, and it all seemed to come together really well. The training plan worked out great.
Wow. So Elijah, was it more your idea or more your dad's idea?
I don't know. I think I saw him doing it and then I was like, I think that's cool. I don't like team sports. I think that'd be fun for us to hang out and do that.
That is so cool. That's like what every parent like wishes for, I think, for their kid to look up to them and say, "Yeah, that looks pretty cool. I want to be like you." It's not just I want to do that. I want to be like you and I want to do that with you. That's super cool. I mean, I'm a parent and my kids haven't wanted to do that so much. So that's really cool
Yep.
that you started so early mountain biking too. I think that's one of the skills that's sometimes a little bit scary. But Elijah, was there anything that scared you about racing the C to C?
I just did not know what to expect. Like some of the stories of like people getting shotguns and crazy stories, but I was just like, whatever, let's just do it.
Well, you remember their race ramble too, right?
Yeah.
When we listened to their 25th anniversary C2C and heard all of the tragedy on that first paddle, I think you asked me, like, Dad, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure. Yeah. But I'd say you should know what to expect. Like we've recorded the last seven that we've done and put it on YouTube. So yeah,
Right.
you can see what it, but yeah, anytime you get a shotgun pulled, which we need to hear that story at some point. I know you talked about it a little bit on AR 101 last night. But Elijah, I totally feel you, man. When I was young, my dad like super pushed me towards team sports, and soccer was the one that I was actually pretty good at. And I kept progressing and progressing, and then eventually I literally was like missing goals on purpose because I was like, I don't like this. I don't want to be good at this. And I just want to be a skateboarder and a punk rocker, and I want to ride my bike and jump ramps on bikes. I don't want to do this stuff anymore. So I feel you. I like torpedoed my own athletic career just to be a skateboarder. So I'm glad you're doing your own thing and you found adventure racing and mountain biking. That's really cool.
Yep.
I want to know what your friends think about it. What do they think about you getting the record? And did they even know what adventure racing is, or if you had to educate them?
I think I had to explain them and they were like, I don't think I can ever do that.
Yeah. Did you think you could do it?
I thought based on how I felt like after 18 hours, how good I felt that I could most likely do it.
Yeah, that's great.
But
Yeah.
I think the mental toughness is something that some people have and some people don't. And like you just said, your friends are like, I could never do that. But you're like, you know what? It can't be that hard. Let's give it a try. So your team name is Trailheads Adventure Company. And as we were walking around eating ice cream after the race at C2C, you got into the philosophy behind your team name and y'all's philosophy on how to overcome hardship. And Jason, you talked a little bit about your military experience. So um, please tell our audience, like, how did tell us about your team name and your philosophy? Because I think it was super unique and just awesome.
For sure. Yeah, so there's a few aspects to it. And I want to go back to what Andrea said. I mean, it's so important to spend time with our kids. I mean, this is such an awesome opportunity. So one of my best friends of many, many years, he and I had started this concept of trailheads, and and I guess we really have not put enough emphasis on it to get it off the ground, but it's kind of sitting dormant for a while. And then when we started realizing we wanted to build a team and we wanted to, um, I mean, really commit to this thing that we were doing with adventure racing, we turned that idea more into our team name and wanted to brand with it. Um, and so some of the philosophy is our hope is that in the future we build the brand to the point where we really work with that motto of find your trailhead, get to the start line, because that's the hardest part is everything we just talked about. People think mentally they can't do it. And for me, it ties back to some military experience along with the responsibility I have as a father to raise a young man. And so something very important to us as a family is our faith. And so, for me, it is I feel a responsibility to raise a godly man who's going to protect and provide for his family. And a big part of that is getting through struggle and hardship and learning to overcome problems, solve problems, and endure hardship. And I looked back, it was ironic. It just clicked along this journey that this is a 72-hour adventure race. And in the Marine Corps and boot camp, the culmination of our training is a 72-hour crucible with sleep deprivation, physical, physical challenges, food deprivation, all those things. And as Elijah and I started talking more about it, I say, son, this is almost like your crucible. Like as you're 12 years old, you're starting that journey into young manhood. Um, this will be a great test for us to go through things together. We'll go to the shotgun story in a little bit. I thought it was really fitting that we got to go through a true like hardship and like, this is the trial of life. it was a life and death moment actually in the race to navigate, but to teach him how to do those things, this has been um, this has been incredibly special on a number of levels. It's so much more than just crossing the finish line at 12 years old. It's really been the journey through all the training, through the race itself, and I just, if anything, I hope that it inspires folks. I mean, I'd love to share some more as we're talking, just to really encourage people. This adventure racing sport, this group of people who do this sport are just an incredible family. You asked about whether he thought he could do it. I've been so just, I mean, I've been amazed at you guys and Lewis and everybody, that associated with disability, with everyone at Warrior, Jeff and Hunter and everyone, all the volunteers. I have not been to a single adventure race, whether it be one of these larger races, a local one. We have some great race directors here in the Charlotte area. Adam Bratton's been a great guy with Human Powered Movement. We have some other, yeah, actually he's using his cup right now. But everywhere we've been, you don't feel a competitive spirit. You don't feel like anybody's out there trying to hold you back, to keep you from getting ahead, to, just it's constant encouragement. And I think that's been a huge part of this. That's helped us tremendously because everywhere Elijah's been, they've been cheering him on. Hey, bud, you can do this. It's such a great family, and I can't say enough good things about the sport. And it really is about get to the start line, find your trailhead because you can do this.
Yeah.
And one last thing I want to say quickly is I think Doug said this last night. I think it's important is winning's different to everybody. You know, you guys are out there pushing for the podium. We're trying to get a 12-year-old across the state, and he set his own goal of 20 checkpoints. We reached 24, right? So you can have your own win within the race too, and I think that's also very important.
I think it's important to know too that encouragement, it's not just because Elijah's 12 years old. When you're in this sport, you get encouragement no matter what your age. Like almost everybody wants everyone to have their best race ever. Your main competition is yourself. And then of course your friends. and and then everyone that you might know. But it's a friendly competition and we're all always wanting everyone to do their best and feel good about what they've done. I'm glad you feel that way. But we have to hear about the shotgun story. What is this? How did that
Um,
start off, Elijah?
Well, we got on the bus and one of the maps is blank. So Dad was not able to plan for that section. We turned up at an intersection that we were not planning to turn up at. So we went down the road a little bit trying to figure out where we were, and then we went back to double check the sign, and the guy comes out and cocks the shotgun, asks if you want to get shot.
Wow.
Wow.
I
That has
was
never happened to me in my entire life. I think I would be panic struck. What did you do?
I wanted to get out of there.
Yeah.
just want to take off. I was truly, it took me a minute to realize it was really happening. It didn't seem real because we're on the side of the road. I mean, we're not in anyone's property. We are standing on the side of
And
the
the
road.
guy's in a fenced-in property on the
Yeah.
opposite side of the road, and his house is a good ways away from the road on the other side of the fence.
Like we were nowhere near him, his property. He was inside a fenced yard. And
Weird.
I mean, you hear the very distinct sound of a pump shotgun, and you look over, and here comes a guy pointing a shotgun at you, yelling, "Do you want to get shot?"
Like he's
And
pointing it at you. Like,
pointing it at us.
that's
Yes.
like a felony. It's like if there was a cop there viewing this, like you never point a gun at somebody unless they need to be dead. That's
And
so
at the end of
scary.
it, I was so frustrated. I didn't have my GoPro running of all like saving battery, and I was like, if I could have just had my GoPro running, what man, what footage that would be. Um, but yeah, we were standing on the side of the road looking at our map board. We were standing in front of one of the street signs because, like Elijah said, it was at a turning point between two of the maps. I thought I was on a different road than I was on, and I thought I knew where I was going. I was like, I just need to double check. I don't want to get too far off track here. And then this happens, and immediately I just show my hands. Hey man, listen, like let me help you understand that I'm standing next to my 12-year-old son. You're about to make a really bad decision. So how about put the shotgun down? Let's have a conversation about what's going on. And I was able to de-escalate it. I mean, maybe back to military training a little bit, but it was just funny that by the end of it, he's still standing there holding the shotgun, and then he's like, "Well, you need directions?" Like, oh man. Just have a nice night. Please go back
No,
inside.
Come on in, have a beer.
wow.
Right. Uh,
And it was funny how like Florida's roads are named. Like there's the same exact highway, but it's west and east and north and south.
Yeah, that was part of the problem because yeah, didn't pick up on that at first. You've got what Street Drive and Avenue Road and all that stuff, but then you've got the highway numbers, and the same highway runs north and south and east and west in the same area. So we're looking at our compass and looking at the map, and yeah, we were just triple checking our nav, and then yeah, that was a bit of a surprise. But
Wow.
wow. Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know what to say about that. I think that's nuts.
pretty wild.
And good job de-escalating. And Elijah, hopefully that never happens again in an adventure race. I can't imagine it will. I've never heard of it happening before. So,
Jeff told us when they did his Hunter's 12-year-old race, they had a guy fire a warning shot in the air at them.
ooh, I wonder if it was the same guy.
So we're like, yeah, is this a Florida thing? Is this like a 12-year? Like, what's the correlation here? I don't think it happened to Miles, but yeah, I guess two of the three 12-year-olds had guns involved.
Wow.
So, one of the things I think I remember you saying while we were talking is you had a little bit of a philosophy, and I'm interested in both of your responses on this, but as a parent, you can treat your kid like a kid, or you can kind of treat them like an adult and expect them to act like an adult. Um, and so how has that changed, like your relationship, raising a son, and Elijah, you're trying to, become a teenager. Um, the difference between being treated like a kid and being treated like an adult, but having to live up to the expectation of whichever one you choose. Like, what's your philosophy on that?
I don't know, I feel like there's kind of like a little bit of both. Like kind of have fun sometimes, but also be kind of like an adult sometimes.
Yeah.
I think that one thing I'll say for anybody who wants to go race with their kid, just remember they're still a kid. I mean, he's in a transition period. So, funny story. This is what you get for racing with a 12-year-old. Um, as we're rolling the bikes onto the U-Haul at the start line, we're turning our bikes in. I looked down at Elijah's handlebars and I said, "What happened to your bike mount or your mount for your light?" "Oh yeah, it's broken." Come on, man.
Like, we have time before the race to fix this.
I was
But
like, "When did it break?" He's like, "A couple weeks ago." Oh my God. So in the, TA1 was already stressful enough. And so I'm putting the bike on the U-Haul, already in my mind, trying to think how I'm going to MacGyver his headlight on his bike in the middle of the race. And so, in this cold TA1 transition, I'm using this web of zip ties to try to hold his headlight on his
While
bike.
Hunter's trying to
And
film
Hunter's
us.
like filming me, trying to get this thing
yeah.
on there. But that to me is the thing you got to remember. Is you got to set the expectation, and I do want to hold him to a higher standard, hold him accountable, but I've got to remind myself it's very important when you build your race strategy. I can't go out there expecting to clear a course, or even on an 18-hour or a 10-hour race. You got to be very strategic in what you decide to cut. You got to think, all right, these are expensive points, or I can't let my ego get in the way and say, I know I can do that, and just drag him along and make him suffer with me because I know I can do it. I have to be mindful of the sleep thing. I didn't want to stay there at TA4 for 5 hours of sleep, but I knew the circumstances and I knew what he needed.
And also we got pretty far ahead though.
Yeah,
I
we
think we were
did.
like a day ahead of our schedule.
It's true. Yeah, we've been
Wow.
pushing so hard to get caught up time-wise to make room for that sleep. We did get that philosophy. Um, but I think that what I would say more than anything is that I do feel like I see way too many people who don't put enough of an expectation on our kids. I think they're capable of way more than we give them credit for. Um, I've just been so impressed as Elijah keeps setting these higher and higher bars. When we did the 50K, that's another thing I should say is let them set some goals, right? I asked him about the CPs. What's your CP goal? When we did the 50K, what's your time goal? He said under 9 hours, and I said it's aggressive, but we can do it. So we built a pace. I went to the drugstore and I got a big poster board, and we wrote out a pace plan. And he said 9 hours. And I think it was 8 hours and 55 minutes was our
I've
pace
got
plan.
that poster.
And he was 37 seconds off of his pace.
Wow.
Whatever.
Wow.
8 hours and
That's
55 minutes and
amazing.
37 seconds, right? So let them set the goals and then help hold them accountable and then help them celebrate the wins and then manage the losses. So,
And I think, it's it's different because, your family, your father and son, but it's also a little bit the same in every other team. People are, having to work together and manage expectations as a team. And yeah, some person does a little extra in this and another person does that. And it's all that teamwork that really, and if you carry that outside of racing, it's going to serve you well in life too. So great lessons to learn for sure.
for sure.
So what you don't have too much more time, but I want to know what you were most proud of during the race. What was something you were most proud of, Elijah,
I think
during the race?
getting the first section of the race done, like legs 1 through 3 with the first track, then the rough paddle, and then getting through that, and then being able to take a break after that.
Yeah. Yeah, it made you feel really great, I'm sure. Yeah, you should be proud of that.
Especially getting TA4, that felt amazing.
Hmm.
That's awesome. What
It
about
does
you,
seem
Jason?
like
What was your most proud moment?
Oddly enough, I think it was actually coming into TA4, just because I think we all said that that bike leg from 3 to 4 was way more than anyone expected. Um, and we, I mean, we had a tough day. I mean, there were some low points along that bike ride, and it when that bike ride is so much more than you expected, now you've added that to the overall race. So now how bad is it going to be from 5 to, I'm sorry, I said 4 earlier, riding into TA5, from TA4 to 5, how much worse is it going to be 5 to the finish, right? And I'm looking down at my bike computer and I'm like, I have to put him behind me because we're riding like 25, 26 kilometers an hour. And I'm like, son, we just rode over 60 miles and you're still riding this strong, this far into the race.
yep.
That made me super proud. And he was like, Dad, I don't want to sleep. I just want to keep riding. I want to finish. And yeah, that made me proud because again, you don't know. He's never done more than 18 hours. And now you're what, 50 something hours into the race and he's crushing it. That was that big moment for me to go,
Was this your longest race also?
oh yeah,
The longest we've ever done is 18.
yeah, together for both of us. 18 is the longest we've ever done.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, you should both be very proud.
It was a lot of fun.
So okay, so we're coming up on time, but I've got two questions like to kind of end it. So first, what would y'all's recommendation be to other parents with younger kids trying to do big stuff? Like I'm sure some parents out there are listening are going, there ain't no way I could do this with my kid. But either way, do you have some recommendations, either of you, on how to get somebody to that trailhead so that they can achieve big things like you guys just did?
We're homeschooled, so after one of our homeschool lessons, I talked to one of the new kids, and I got to know them. And they were like, I like to bike. So we started this thing like he'll come to my house and we'll ride on my road, ride up and down my road. My road is less busy than theirs. So we'll ride bikes and hang out.
Yeah, I think along those lines, it's what I said earlier, a win is a win, and get started. I mean, look for an orienteering club to learn the maps, and look for simple, short local races. Find that thing to get engaged with, but go just go outside. I mean, go ride, go for a hike. Start small because that big thing doesn't have to be a 72-hour race. That big thing could be an 8-hour race. I have a 9-year-old daughter. She is into team sports. She plays softball. Our first race together was 4 hours, right? So that bar is going to be different for everyone. But I think that the most important thing is start somewhere. One thing we didn't really get into is, I have this whole journey for myself where I was actually injured in combat, and you wouldn't know me if I showed you pictures of me from 12 years ago. I was over 100 pounds heavier, right? So this journey to a 72-hour adventure race started with rehabilitation and 5Ks, right? So go start somewhere and start with the 5K. And like for Elijah, he didn't start, like I said, starting when he was 9, but we did a 10-hour and 8-hour adventure race. We DNF'd one. We finished one.
In the next weekend, I was like, before I
Turn
turned
10, yeah.
10, I want to finish one.
So yeah, get to the trailhead, get to the start line. I know that seems like such a simple answer, but that go. Just, don't let the mental barrier hold you back.
And
Yep.
I think a hidden message that you just touched on was don't be afraid to fail. You
Absolutely.
DNF'd a race. So what? Was it the end of the world?
No,
No.
it
You
really
just
sucked. We got back and canopy was gone. It was pouring wet, cold, but next
It's a miserable
weekend,
day.
yeah, the next weekend we just did it again.
Yeah, we DNF'd a race. Our canopy tent was twisted up, thrown in the dumpster. Our tent that we were sleeping in got flooded in the rain. Everything was just fell apart. Next morning, sitting at Waffle House, he looks at me and says, "When can we do the next one?" And we signed up for a race the following weekend.
Awesome. When's the next
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love how sometimes your failures can just be motivation for the next thing.
That's
It
right.
doesn't have to turn into, a pity party. It's like,
That's
no,
right.
we're gonna get this. We might have to try again, but we're gonna get it. Really
That's right.
cool.
Okay, so you're talking about the next thing. I know Hunter kind of took you under his wing, and if you notice, he went from being the youngest kid to do the C to C. Now he's like doing FKTs in Iceland.
Yep.
What do you guys have on the calendar? I realize you're probably not doing FKTs in Iceland, but do you have some big goals? And I know you do more than adventure racing, right? You're into just big goals all around. What do you guys have on your calendar for, let's say, the next 6 to 12 months that's going to be hard and you have to work towards?
I want to do one of the bigger races.
So your teammate um, gave us a nice little nudge. So talking to Lewis, he and his Andrea were
Yeah.
pushing us pretty hard at the end of C2C that we should consider one of the ARWS races, maybe come down to Mexico. And I mean, Hunter is still going to be a mentor, but I think Lewis also wants to kind of step in that role. But he's like, hey, come, I'll help you with, an ARWS race, maybe do the one in Mexico. So
Or he's probably talking in Ecuador.
he was looking at La
Oh,
Ruta
the
Madre.
Ruta Madre. Oh, so definitely Mexico. Okay.
Yeah.
Lewis, I think of like he's done like every single Wadasenshi and he loves Ecuador. So that's what I was imagining he's just trying to get you to do Ecuador. But yeah.
So we've been looking, we've been browsing. Um, right now we don't have another big goal yet. We are going to try to do a few adventure races through the year to keep ourselves going.
There's an 8 hour that's local. I think we're gonna try and push pretty hard on it.
Yeah, we'll maybe do some of the shorter races and be a little more competitive on those, but still kind of in the planning stage. I'm not sure yet.
I think it's okay to ride your high too. Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to have something to one up yourself that quickly because you definitely will. We know you will. But yeah, the ARWS races, vary in style and what to expect. So, doing your research, asking people who have done those races before and adding a couple teammates. Yeah, I'm sure you'll get there to that goal someday. But I really
Yeah.
appreciate you sharing your story and, inspiring other people to do what you've done. Congratulations, both of you. I'm super excited for you. It was really fun to see how well you were doing and to see your dot continuing to go across the state of Florida. So thanks for spending your time with us and sharing all of that. Good luck to you in the future too.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Thanks for all the support and encouragement along the way from you guys as well. It's been awesome to get to race alongside you, but to have be welcomed into the family by you guys the way you have. So
Yeah.
thank you.
You're definitely welcome. And it's so much fun seeing you guys in races. I remember like one of my high points during the race, like I think we were getting off that big trek to the paddle and I was like, whoa, they're coming into TA and like run over and do the high fives and stuff. It was like gave me a little bit of like, wow, here we are at the same spot at the same time at the same TA, and
Well, I don't know if you've seen what we put on our Instagram, quick recap, but we have a picture with you with your team at the start line and at the finish line, and
yeah.
that was a high point for Elijah. He's like, I got to race with this ability, and you got to see you on the course, start line, finish line. That was a big part of it for him. So I know he was super
Cool.
excited.
That's cool. So if people want to follow you, how would they find you?
We are Trailheads Adventure Co. On Instagram, and then also tied to our Facebook account too.
Okay. And you said you took some GoPro. Are you going to put that out there?
I did. We have over 8 hours of it. I'm about halfway through it, so it'll be on YouTube very soon. Yeah, we've got a
Awesome.
shorter recap and a longer recap that we'll be posting. Yeah,
Is the
That's great.
YouTube channel also the Trailheads Adventure Co?
it is. Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
we actually haven't got any content out yet. We've got this whole library, and I just haven't prioritized it. So I got to start getting some videos out there.
So cool. All right. Well, thanks again.
Cool.
Awesome.
And
Thank you.
Bye,
congratulations.
guys. Have a great evening.
All right. Last but not least is ARDotWatch. You probably know Doug Silk because anyone who adventure races in the US has seen his work. He's done a great job sharing the sport with his media. You can check out his Facebook page. And this time he was racing, and he was racing with Charles Klink, Johnny Hand, and Megan Nettuno. So let's hear their story.
So we are stoked to have another team with us, and this one with a very unique experience, I believe. But this is our really good friend Doug with AR.Watch, yay! Who normally is interviewing us on our races. And this time we got his team, and we've got Megan, Johnny, and Charles who are on his team, going through this race with a very unique experience. So we wanted to share this with our audience and talk a little bit about all that kind of stuff. So I guess let's start off with just intros. Let's start off with Doug, because like it's Doug and he's like a celebrity. So like, who are you? Where are you from? And like, what's your race experience? Like, you've done C2C at least 3 times, right?
Well, this was my fourth time, my third finish. But I'm Doug. It's really weird being on this side and not kind of running the podcast here. But yeah, this is the first team iteration of AR.Watch for any race. I have raced solo as AR.Watch a few times, but when I put together this race, I wanted it to be a mix of some really great experience, people that I knew that I would have a lot of fun with, and one of my oldest friends, Charles, that we've been trying to plan this race for 4 years. And he had injury after injury and wasn't able to race. And so this year was the first time. So I was really excited about this race because I knew I was going to be with some amazing people.
Excellent.
That's awesome. Well, Charles, why don't you go next?
So I'm Charles. I'm from Philadelphia. I met Doug during triathlon. He eventually became my coach. We're both in law enforcement. So we had a similar bond from that. And I went and did some Sherpaing for him for Ironmans. We've gone out to Wyoming, done some adventure racing. I've only done 12-hour races until this race. So it was a quite humbling experience.
Awesome. How about you, Johnny?
Yep, Johnny. This is actually my fifth C2C. C2C was my first adventure race 5 years ago, which was a fun experience. And since then, I've been able to do a bunch of mixed solo, team, longer races, shorter races, and just really like the team dynamic.
And we also, before Megan introduces herself, we need to thank your family for always volunteering and just being so great when you see them on the course. I just really appreciate them.
I always say they're more popular than I am. I'm just a race.
Well, they're handing out food at the TAs. Smiling face, encouraging food. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Well,
So
and you have quite an artistic daughter.
Yeah, I was just gonna say his daughter was making some beautiful portraits.
Yeah,
They were really fantastic.
so cool.
I
All right.
actually got her
Cool.
to do one of our finish line pictures. So
Oh, cool.
I'll see when that comes out. I can't wait.
Awesome. All right, Megan.
So I think got started around the same race that Johnny did. And so this was my third C2C, my third finish. And really kind of got started into the long expedition length races, have done shorter ones and longer ones at this point. Really enjoy the expedition. I really like the longer races. Love the expedition length. I can't talk about it, but yeah.
Yeah, I love it too.
So how did your team come together? Like how did you Doug, you had this grand vision. We're gonna get into the grand vision, like the goal, but like how did you pull these guys into like, hey, come along for this ride? It's gonna be eventful.
You know, it was fun because like Charles finally, like, he had emergency hip surgery last year, like a couple weeks before the race, and had to bail out. I ended up going solo last year, which was actually a really cool experience if you haven't done C2C solo. Because you just end up with a bunch of other random people throughout the race, and it's pretty cool. But I was like, Charles, your hip is good. Let's get out there. Like, we're doing this. I was like, I'm going to put together a team because my idea for last year, I was doing all the coverage all by myself. And it was fine because, like, I was able to do the interviews when I wanted to. I didn't have to stop and wait. And, but I wanted it to be more inclusive this year. So I had talked to Johnny before. I hadn't raced with him, but knew that we kind of had a common bond, I guess, just the way that we talk to each other. And I was like, hey, man, you want to join in on this race? And I knew Megan was super strong. I had raced around her, and then we finally did a 12, was that a 12-hour race last year together here in Virginia.
Yeah, in
And
September, I think. Yeah.
yeah, and just to get that taste of like, are we going to be tired of each other after 12 hours? And it worked flawlessly. And I knew that when it comes to expedition racing, you really have to, we talk about choosing your team very carefully, right? Because you need people that have like-minded mentalities, that have the same goals and the same drive and like all of those things. And I felt like this team would work, and it really did.
I think we need to kick it over to Charles next, since he's the total newbie. I'm just wondering, like, what your expectations were of the race and if they lived up to it.
Well, I knew it was going to be hard and difficult and trying mentally and physically. I just went in on it like it would be an Ironman race on steroids. Um, and boy, was it. It was a crazy experience. Johnny helped me out with some of his sayings, like, you can do anything for 12 hours. You just got to repeat it. So kind of broke it down like that. I didn't tell any of my fellow teammates that I was struggling after 24 hours, probably around 36, and I was probably going to call it quits, but I couldn't let Megan do the 23-mile paddle by herself. I would have felt so guilty. And luckily, we were able to bypass that, and they gave us the option to cycle and kind of loosened my legs up a bit and kind of put me in a better mind frame instead of being cold and wet on a 23-mile paddle, 24, whatever it was.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, everything's temporary is something that I usually tell myself. Like, you don't realize how bad you can be, hurting and then be able to turn it around.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, I turned it around a lot, and then the last day I was complaining a lot, and thankfully my teammates just sucked it up. I didn't want to take the joy away from them, and we made it, so it was enjoyable.
Can I say something
Everything
on
ebbs
that?
and flows though, right? I mean, like, I was really down right when you were starting to get better, and you towed me along that berm, like, and put Megan and Johnny in the hurt locker just trying to catch up to us because he was had me on tow and they could barely get back up to us. So like you kind of have to pick each other up, and that's this beauty of a team, right? Because Johnny is just so positive all the time, like nothing bothers him. And the rest of us are like, hold on, this sucks for me right now. Let me have this. Um, but
He's like, suck it up, Buttercup. It could always get worse.
Yes.
Let's go.
No, Johnny
I
literally
mean,
said during he's like, yeah, the harder it gets or the suckier it gets, the happier I get. He really, you really enjoy it and you thrive on it.
and I do apologize for bringing the cold down. That's like my normal Florida weather when I go down in the wintertime. Always cold.
it's all Charles' fault why it was as cold as it is behind Chip right there.
That's funny.
So, Doug, you going into this, we had a lot of discussions, and I know you were working with Johnny on this, but you had like this goal of having this a media live experience that's probably never been done. I know AR.Watch, you know, the concept you've been working on for a while, but this was the first time. So, what was that big goal going into this race?
Well, Johnny and I did some testing ahead of time because we weren't really sure how it was going to work. And look, this is all new, right? Like this hasn't been done. When I started AR.Watch about a year and a half ago, it was to just continue to enhance bringing what's happening in the races to the people. And so we're continuing to grow. I mean, we learned over this race that sometimes our plan of like having Johnny's GoPro go directly to his phone, we didn't have good service, so it wasn't going directly to his phone. And so it wouldn't be till we got into the TAs that 10 or 15 videos would, populate, which was good. It was a good way for us to learn. And, it was the first kind of iteration of us doing it. But Johnny, I mean, you you did a lot of the recordings, as far as the GoPro. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I thought it was a great idea because you kind of go into like from a contact perspective when you're doing like a long race for your family at least, you're kind of like in a dark place where no one really knows what's going on. They can dot watch and follow along, but it's not the same. So I think I love the idea of a lot of really quick 30-second clips and trying to figure out a workflow that would auto upload them and then having, the assistant on the back end with access to the cloud and like stitching together stuff. I love that idea. I wish we would have had a little bit more coverage. Like I'd have great coverage in certain areas and 5, 10, 15 videos would upload, but I was doing 30-second snapshots all throughout the day, every day, and then it would kind of come in waves. So I do like that because we got a lot of really positive feedback and a lot of thumbs up and likes from family members that were following their racers, wanting to see what was going on, and it kind of did give you a good picture into it without unfortunately, like sometimes you take a lot of video and you're like, yep, there's me on a bike again for the 17th time, at night. So
Well,
it's
and
like
true that
having those.
it was just us, like that, the second to last bike, so the 63, 65 mile or whatever. We didn't see a single other team for the entire like 9 hours.
Wow.
And so, like, I mean, there's only so much of my butt you want to see in on the bike in front of you. And so, it was interesting, but it was really cool because like Megan did all of our, like, she was the punch monkey the entire time. And so on almost all the videos, you got to see Megan like crushing it and going in and finding the checkpoint, which that was cool because AR.Watch is never about Doug Silk, right? It has never been about me. It's been about trying to just expose the sport and grow it. And I hope that people really enjoyed that aspect of it. Like it was cool to go live from the TA there at the O course. So we're gonna continue to push the envelope and continue to do it. I mean, the team AR.Watch is not going away, and I think it was really cool. And you could ask my teammates, like, we were kind of celebrities out there, which was really neat because we'd be going and people were like, oh, it's team AR.Watch. Like, you might not know who other people are, but people knew who we were, and we kind of stand out.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're just listening to this podcast, you should go on YouTube and see their jerseys because they are bright, like a
Yeah.
yellowy neon green, really stand out. But Johnny, I'm often the one on the team who's wearing the GoPro and trying to catch all the right moments at the right time. And I have a really hard time remembering or even wanting to capture like the hard times. Did you have a hard time capturing the hard times?
Johnny didn't have any hard times.
Uh,
Well, apparently you other people did. And I, as a dot watcher and seeing your videos, which I loved, I didn't notice any down moments in the AR dot watch videos. And I wondered if that was because there were none or because it's just hard to want to turn the camera on then.
Yeah, I had a production schedule for them. So I would say, hey guys, look, put your best smile on. No, I'm just kidding. No, it was honestly, it was for me, I think I was telling Chip this. I set up a workflow where when I hit the power button, it just shoots 30 seconds and turns off automatically. So I could just, don't have to think about it too much other than like get myself in a rhythm, if that makes sense. And then anytime we had a chance that something looks good, like I think Doug was saying, there's only so much you can like take from, seeing my map board on my bike or, walking along that doesn't look like the same thing. You're kind of funnel vision or tunnel vision with it. But anytime we had a chance, like the swim across, anytime we'd see like really cool checkpoints or, the beach or different things, I always try to capture those. I am a bit of a weird person in the sense that I really do get, a little bit more happy the harder things are. So I really like the suffering aspect of these races. So I do, but I usually try to warn people. I think people don't believe me until they race with me, and then it becomes sometimes, an annoyance because they're like, why are you happy right now? And but I'm generally a pretty happy person when it's really bad.
So why are you happy in hard, bad moments?
Yeah, we need to sell
Yeah,
that.
you know what it is? It's I mean, it sounds really kind of philosophical, but the idea that people try to shield themselves from hard things, like under this understanding that they're gonna, prevent hard things, and then hard things are coming no matter what. So I really enjoy that I can put myself into hard situations and truly be in joy during those things. And because you don't get to control the hard that gets thrown at you, but you do get to control how you respond to the hard. And so I do like having that kind of grit and understand that, because some people laughed, but I'm like, man, you paid good money for this. And that's so true. You paid good money to be in this moment, having friction, having pain, having blisters, having whatever. Why wouldn't you just be happy about it rather than like, upset when you paid to put yourself there?
And I think Doug did capture one of the down moments. We were on top of a bridge. It was the last day. The sun was rising. They were all happy, and I was like, we're all on top of another stupid bridge, burning energy and watts going up this bridge. I was just not having it. That wind, that north wind was terrible.
The wind was bad.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I will say this. So I tried to talk Charles up. I was like hyping him up the night before the final like push to checkpoint 72 because it's been this way. Literally, I'm like, Charles, you're going to get a second win. That sun's going to come up. We're going to be going towards the last checkpoints. It's going to be amazing. You're going to be a different person. And then Charles was like, nope, no, I'm going to be angry. And to see that like people like I was like, wow, he's really upset about this. Like, we're going over the bridge and he's like bitching at us. So,
It was very odd, Megan. I think you pointed out, you're like, most people, once you get checkpoint 72, it's like a celebration back to the, hotel.
Yeah.
And Charles was like angry elf, like the whole way back to the hotel.
You guys all got that adrenaline dump. I didn't get it. I was like, this is
He's like, why
terrible.
doesn't it end right here on the beach? Like it's sea to sea. Why are we going back?
I remember thinking that like you have that big moment, but then it's still not over. Like, is it ever going to be over? Getting to the hotel takes,
Yeah.
I don't know, another 20 or 30 minutes.
It's not just right around
It's
the
not
corner.
even close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Megan,
It's not a
how was
mile
it?
or two.
Yeah.
It's many miles.
Megan, how was it for you racing with three very different personalities?
Hold on now. You're taking over my job, Doug,
Oh,
Sorry.
don't you
because
get
My
back.
bad.
but I just wanted to mention before we ask Megan, I want to tell everyone that she's raced in a lot of all women's teams and she's a navigator and she's done big races. She even did Alaska and led her all women's team and was the navigator for that race. And I want to know from Megan, not only how was it racing with these guys, but how have you found it, going with a co-ed team as opposed to going with an all-female team and tell us about your experience.
Man, deep questions. First of all, that Alaska event was fantastic, and Hillary did a great job leading us through that one. Navigation wise, there was a point even in there in like the longer races where you're not making good choices because you have checks and balances that you hold yourself to during those events. And when you navigate, you're looking for all your satellites, you're looking for your backstops and all of that. And you get into those longer races, and it's really, you just stop doing it. It's just like, oh yeah, it's this way. I got this. And so, I mean, it's been interesting actually being on the Ecuador team as well as this team, not being like the lead navigator. So kind of taking that step back and just being backup, or, every now and then taking over some of the navigation, but really overall just kind of being there and support in the problem solving process. Johnny can attest to it. I got a little tired because I'm used to having my brain just turned on for it, like because you're constantly engaged, you have to be. And we were doing that nice long ride, one of those like late middle of the night rides, and I was just started falling asleep. And we were riding single file, so we weren't really talking to each other. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna fall asleep. So I started telling myself a story. And then
It
Johnny,
was the wackiest story ever because I was listening to her tell it to herself.
Okay. Yeah, something about an earthworm. But anyway,
So do you remember the story?
it was about an earthworm who protected the yard from all the predators because they wanted to be a badass. And so they trained to be a badass.
It was crazy. It was wild.
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So at that point, Johnny kind of dropped back a little bit later. He dropped back and he's like, I don't think we're gonna go for these checkpoints. And I'm like, why not? And he says, well, I'm a little worried about you. You're getting kind of tired and you're muttering to yourself a little bit. And I was like, oh my God, please do not skip those checkpoints. I'm so bored. I need to navigate. I
Give
need to
me
go
the
after
maps.
something. I was like, I need like this
Oh yeah, and
mental
she took the
stimulation.
maps there, and she actually found the one really hard checkpoint, that first one in the north little up and back
Yeah.
section.
Yep.
And
the
she
sand dunes.
crushed it. Yeah,
Mhm.
she crushed it there.
Yeah, that was a hard one.
Thank God for Circle K.
For like 360 meters out in the sand dunes, and
Yeah. Well, she and I took a really good, it was the best 20 minutes sleep I think I may have ever gotten, on the floor of the subway, in front of the subway at the Circle K. And that changed, I mean, that really changed it for me too, because
down by the ice machine around the corner on the right. Yeah. Yeah. We were there. We did the same 20 minutes.
Well, I was going to say, Andrew, it's important to note, like, so we had 3 navigators that were all pretty competent, and I've always been on teams where I'm the only navigator, and so it's natural for me to be like, okay, I don't mind navigating. This is my first time I've had other really capable navigators, and so I thought about Megan having the issue of like not her brain not focusing on something. I just was watching, her every time we stopped, dipping her head down and then start talking to herself. And I was actually making a safety call because I didn't want to miss any stuff. But I'm like, man, we're about to get up into some stuff. And we just took a 20-minute nap. She's like talking to herself. But then she did a good job. I told my wife, I was like, she chewed my ass out on the course, which was great. But she was so upset that I was going to, think about dropping those points for safety. And then we turned over out. She was like, I just need to navigate. And I was like, great. So we got to a spot, turned over maps, let her study the maps. And then she crushed those checkpoints all the way back in and never had an issue. So it was totally foreign to me that, that long bike ride would be doing that to her because I'm, focused on the map. So.
Yeah. So Megan, is it the case that it doesn't necessarily matter if you're racing with men or women, but the ability to be able to nav when you need to and to have that extra challenge is that the biggest difference for you?
Yes and no. Honestly, one of the biggest differences that I experienced part of the scene with Ecuador is being the weakest person on the team. And that's not necessarily true the whole time, right? That is 100%. But going into this knowing that, hey, I am a strong, capable female. I've been training. This is something that I've been doing a lot of. And so I have no doubt that I will be able to finish this event but will I be able to keep up? And that's been something that is, constantly there, because in terms of my riding speed or running speed, there's a lot of experienced racers out here that are faster than I am. And so that was the constant. If I say the biggest difference is between in an all male team versus all female teams, is usually in female teams, I'm may not always be the strongest, but I'm fairly strong. So at least we're evenly matched or right around in there. Alaska team, so 3 incredibly strong females on my team in Alaska. They were all came in ready to go, and they have all done really cool things since then too. So but it was, in terms of other events, like I'm sometimes the strongest biker, and then again, yes, I'm usually the navigator. So it was that's been kind of the thing where I focused on, like in Ecuador, that's all I focused on. I was like, I'm going to keep up, it'll be fine. And just, figuring out different ways to keep myself engaged and part of the conversation and part of the communication. With this team, it was a little bit different. We were, all doing really well, pace about the same until Charles took off that one time. It smoked us all.
The
But
motorboat.
yeah. But in regards to that, that's been a bigger difference. It's different stepping back and not navigating the full race. It's hard sometimes to then jump in back on the maps after not having looked at it in a while and be like, okay, all right, I'm feeling this out. You have to kind of get a feel for them again. But in general, yeah, that was it. I worry more if I talk about, packing for your fears, it's like pack as little as possible so I can move as fast as possible, has been kind of the thing, which has actually been good. It's made my pack a lot lighter.
Well, and I can tell you that there was never a moment where any of us looked at Megan as the weakest link. I was the weakest link for a good bit of it. I mean, Charles had to put me on toes several times. My feet were hurting really bad between like the 24 and 30 hour mark. Megan didn't complain once. She was sick the entire time. She never complained once. When she got in the front of the bike, of the single file bike, we had to hold on to her tire. So like, there's no weak link when it comes to Megan being on your team. I will vouch for that. I will sell anybody that. She's amazing, and I would race with her anywhere, anytime.
Thank you.
Well, the best races, the best teammates too. It's just a much funner experience when everybody is around the same ability level. Or, maybe a little more or a little less in this discipline or that discipline. But when you can lean on each other and you're not always feeling like you're the one that's trying to keep up all the time, I definitely feels like, and yeah, so it's a lot of fun when you're pretty evenly matched. So it sounds like you guys were, and that's awesome.
I will say, I feel like, I mean, there was a lot of times, because again, I think all of us have been really accustomed to being the sole navigator on our teams. But there were times where Johnny's like, hey, do you want to see where we're going? I'm like, nope. You tell me where, because like I had to separate myself or else I'll want to try to take control. And I didn't need to do that. And so I would purposely take that step back a couple times and only insert myself if I needed to when I was not in that role, because I was the team captain, and there were a couple times where I think I made that decision for us. But for the most part, like it was seamless, and I felt like we all supported each other very, very well in the race. And it was good. I loved it. Had a great time.
Yeah, I can tell. That's awesome. And I'm wanting to hear from Charles again. I want to know what recommendations you have for racers who are thinking of stepping up to longer races. Do you have any things you learned along the way that you want to share?
You don't need to pack as much stuff as you think you need, because that weighs you down a lot to pack. I probably should have trained more than I did.
We can always say that.
Yeah, with work and stuff, I just really didn't know what to expect. I like doing hard, difficult things, but this is definitely the hardest thing I've done. if you're training, train more than you think you're doing because you're not doing enough for 72 hours.
Yeah, I mean, I like Doug said, it's almost like we all always feel like we could be doing more. And I don't know, maybe sometimes you just need to do something differently, which is our next question for Johnny. You're nutrition guru, I would say. How did what you know about nutrition and how did you fuel your race and how did that help you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because nutrition is really personal for people in general. Like some people have really sensitive stomachs, and I'm not a big fan of sugary stuff. Like not just because of sugar, but in general, it doesn't sit with me very well. So I tend to like the meat sticks and like more protein filled stuff. So less of the carbs, which is not very traditional for a lot of folks. They look at the gels and the waffles and the different things.
Yeah,
So it tends to be a little bit more high fat and high protein, which does really well for me. I don't know why I just work that way, but I am really particular about making sure my hydration is where it's supposed to be, and that I'm getting enough nutrients in terms of salt, potassium, things like that with electrolytes. It's usually the thing that I see that hits people harder is they think it's food, or they think it's hydration imbalances. So I think that's something I just really have a good gauge on myself, and then kind of tell too if you've raced or if you've been around endurance stuff for a while, you can people are doing by based on the way they're doing things and what they're saying. You can usually see in their actions that hey, they're kind of bonking a little bit. Maybe they need to eat. Hey, when did you take some electrolytes? But we had a good team with that. I don't think we had that issue at all this time.
yeah. I think I had one downtime where I could tell I should have eaten more. I think this year was hard to stay hydrated because it was so cold. Like you're not thinking about being dehydrated because you're cold, even though you're sweating because you have 7 layers on while you're riding your bike and try to stay warm. I used a new product this year called Hydro Patch. I don't know if you've seen on AR.Watch, but we have a new ambassadorship with Hydro Patch, and it's super easy. Megan even tried it after the for the O relay part, and it's just a patch that goes through absorption into your body and helps you with electrolytes. So obviously, it doesn't replace water, but I mean that patch doesn't weigh anything. It's good for about 8 hours, and I changed them out probably 5 times during the race, and I had no cramping the entire time. Um, and so my electrolytes were right where they needed to be.
Yeah, I was kind of disappointed that I didn't have any cramping because Doug gives really good massages.
Hey, does.
The first time we did a 12-hour race, we literally were in Shenandoah Park, and he cramped so bad he couldn't even step off of his bike, and I had to massage his quads in the middle of the like trail. And so, I mean, look, it worked.
It worked.
So
So
one
help
other
me.
question I had on the nutrition, Johnny, did you do real food? Did you do like dehydrated meals? I mean, you probably don't do gels because you don't do the sugars and stuff. So again, again, we want our podcast to be educational, and
Yeah.
you're like the guru. You've done this race a few times and you've learned and all that. So I just like, what's the bulk of your calories?
Yeah. So in between, I really like, to stock up at the TAs because this is unique because you can eat really good calories at the TAs. But my bag was basically like the beef stick, like the grass-fed beef sticks. Um, I will do. I'm trying to think of the name brand. There's type of bar that I normally do, and then I make all my own trail mix up. So I'll add um, a lot of beef jerky, a lot of I think cashews, and then I'll usually find it's like a salty kind of Tex-Mex mix in there. And I'll just make like, 8 bags of them, little bags that I can stuff into my pockets. So that was pretty much it. Like it was protein, meat sticks, and the trail mix, like 90% of what I eat while I'm out.
Well, we're coming up on time, but I want to make sure that you guys get to talk about the good things about racing. We talked about, when you guys had your lows, but what about your highs? Megan, why don't you tell us about your highs?
Um, I mean, obviously that one point that we found that we were just kind of like, Doug and I went to the trail start and it's kind of like, all right, I'm gonna take a bearing. And then he got a slightly different reading than I did. So we both fall, but they were off by just a little bit. So we'd keep each other in sight. And we walked literally straight to it. And those are the most wonderful moments. I mean, I had one of those in fall foliage with my teammate Sasha, and it was like 1,000 meters, and it's just like when that happens, you're just giddy, it's so wonderful to just say you just kind of like happen across that. I was also really enjoyed the swim. Enough, it was incredibly refreshing. We started off not wanting to do it because it was cold when we got off that bus, and none of us were into like freezing. But that was really refreshing, getting out of the water and be like, okay, yeah, I did it. Look, I swam in my first swim in an adventure. So I'm so excited. So I think those were some really great highs, odd ones, but overall, overall I enjoyed the whole race. I didn't have too many crashes, which is great. So, and I mean, my story was clearly entertaining. So
we need to turn that into like an adventure racing children's book or something.
Yeah. Exactly. Charles, what were your highs?
Pretty much when I could contribute to the team. Like the swim was great. Paddling with Megan was fun. Doug had trouble keeping up with us. Had a little motorboat going.
Why is it just me? Johnny was in the boat too.
Yeah, but we got 2 strong paddlers in that boat. Just saying.
And then picking up Doug whenever he needed it. I mean, that grassy berm wasn't easy to ride through, but I found a second gear and just took off. We were going probably like 20 kilometers an hour ish through that stuff. So
he did it for like the last almost 10K, I think.
I know exactly where that grassy berm is. I've had to ride that before, and I agree. It just sucks the speed right out of your sails, the wind out of your sails, whatever the phrase is. It's not fun, that part. So Johnny, what were your highs?
Yeah, I love the swim. That was a lot of fun. I like getting in the water for anything. And then I think, I mean, it kind of sounds cliche, but the team dynamic was so good that we had legitimate throughout the whole race. Like we were laughing and, cracking jokes and telling funny stories. So those were all really good. And the other one was we had a tough patch where we were trying to figure out were we going to really go after our goal. And we had a great discussion where, we were honest with each other and we adjusted and, pivoted and then kept moving forward. So we ended up, doing really well for what we wanted to do.
Still came close. Pretty away.
Our super secret goal was 50 and we ended up with 47. And I will say when we skipped that paddle, we were not sure we were going to get close to that. And that was my lowest section of the race. But honestly, like I think it also turned into my high point because when you can overcome that, I'm getting emotional about it. I was dark in that section. I was walking in front of the team. I was listening to the team talk. I was hearing, we might have to reset our goals. And that destroyed me because I knew that was because of me. And that was really hard for me because I was hurting. I didn't know how I could get out of it, but we were all very honest with each other. And I was honest about where I was. And the team never made me feel bad about it. Megan came to me afterwards and hugged me, and that was a huge difference in the race, honestly, for me, because then we got on that bike and I crushed that next bike. And Like I felt it was totally different. And so I think it's crazy that it can be like the low point and the high point of the race.
Yeah.
Because when you overcome when you're at your lowest, and it's ironic because Charles was at his lowest around that same time, but never said anything. And the fact that we pushed each other, all of us, through that together as a team, that was huge. Um, I I will say, like, we wanted more coverage during the race, but honestly, like, we were in race mode for like at least the second half of the race, and it was mostly about like, let's finish these goals, let's do this, and let's push. But I really loved just having people like it was really awesome for me to hear people really recognize AR.Watch and how AR.Watch has become something in the adventure racing world. That means a lot to me. So that was really, really special for me.
Yeah, you bring a lot to the sport. You bring it alive to the people that aren't actually there, and you do a really great job with that. And all of you, those having your highs being when you get to contribute and you get that team feeling, I think that's just a really common high for adventure racers. It's one of my highs usually. And like Doug said too, a lot of my highs are because I just had a terrible low. So I just think that's awesome that you guys had such a great race, and we're so close to your goals. That means what? What's next for Team AR.Watch, Doug?
Well, so ironically, next year's race finishes on the last day of my 49th year of existence, because my birthday is March 2nd.
Awesome.
And so I feel like we have to get 50 next year, just because that will be my birthday.
Yes.
I still have to convince my wife that I'm going to finish in enough time to also be able to get on my cruise in Cape Canaveral on the 1st.
Awesome. What
But
a great way to recover from the race.
I know. But I'm ready to run it back. I mean, Charles hasn't said no.
I have not said no.
I mean,
Oh, all
this
that
team was
complaining,
awesome.
and you still want to do another one, huh, Charles?
Good.
This
Can
team
do
is awesome, and I would love to run it back.
Can do anything for 12 hours. You just got to repeat it.
Yeah, exactly.
I need to start quoting Johnny too. That's a good one.
I mean, Johnny and Megan were the glue. I mean, I really appreciate having them there, especially Megan. She didn't know it until we reached close to the beach is when I divulged the information of I was really thinking about tapping. I was like, I was hurt and my leg was in shambles, but rebounded, and I was very thankful for them.
Yeah, you had that mental toughness. And Chip has been a little bit quiet, mostly because his internet connection hasn't been extremely stable. So, Chip, did we miss anything?
No, I think you guys covered it. It's really fun to hear. Like one of the adventure racing quotes is, if you want to go fast, go solo, and if you want to go far, go with a team. And it really sounds like this team pulled together and helped each other out exactly when it was necessary. And that's the spirit of adventure racing. You set some goals, you try to reach them. If you can't do it, then you sign up again and you do it the next year and try to do it again. That's awesome.
Yeah. Great job. Congratulations, you guys. And thanks for talking with us.
Thanks for having us on.
And everyone out there listening, thanks for listening.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the interviews with Lubono Capital, Trailheads Adventure, and AR.Watch. Their stories are inspirational. Hopefully, this inspired you to get out there, sign up for your next big race. And it doesn't matter what level you are. You can be in the front of the pack. You can be in the back of the pack. It's your first time. You heard throughout those interviews, all of the above. Everybody had a blast. Push yourself to your limits. AR is the best sport in the world. So thank you for listening, and we will see you next time. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please take a moment to leave a rating and a comment. To find additional content, including the video versions of these discussions, you can search for Disability Racing on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
We hope this podcast inspired you to focus on your abilities and plan your next adventure.
See you on the trail.